Cool. All right. So good evening, everybody, and happy New Year to you all. I'm sharing my video, so I'm not sure if you can see me. Alex, can you confirm whether you can?
Yeah, I can see you, sir.
All right. You can see my shining head. All right, great. I'm going to turn off my video in a few minutes, but I thought this is just important for some of you that we haven't met. So you might just be wondering, who is the voice behind the phone? I've had the chance or the opportunity to speak to a lot of people, and by reason and the nature of our training and where we are in the world at the moment, social distancing and all of those crazy things. So all of our training are online, except a few cases where we at client side that we have to deliver on-site training. So if you're going to engage with us, if cybersecurity is your thing, if you're convinced after these 3 days and you feel that, yeah, while this makes a whole lot of sense, I want to do this course with you or do other courses with you, then our engagement is going to be online. All right, it's going to be online. I mean, by God's grace, if we get the opportunity to meet each other, then that's fine. All right, so my name is Wale Omolere. I am the founder of Smart Learning, and we also have the consulting arm of our business that we call Smart Safe Consulting. All right. So for those that want to make cybersecurity their course, maybe at some point you will learn a little bit more about our business. So the Smart Safe is the consulting arm of our business. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to really go into details, but like I said, if you make this your course, then you will learn a little more about the relationship between the two arm of business. But the Smart Learning is where we do all of the training, okay? And by God's grace, I'm the conveyor. I'm the driver for this business. So you're going to be engaging with me a lot. I have some of my colleagues here. I've got Alex, who's also going to be helping out. I've got Timothy. I'm not sure. I thought maybe I heard Harry's voice earlier on. I'm not sure if Harry is there. I've also got maybe Tunde Shogalu and a few other people that support me, and they're also part of the business as well. So I want to use this opportunity to welcome you to this 3 days journey, 3 days training. I'm really excited. So I've been really, in the last 4 hours before now, I've spent quality time updating my slide, and it's very important. Ask a practitioner in cybersecurity. I try as much as possible to look at my slide and had some new stuff. Cybersecurity is quite dynamic, so I cannot bring the old to you. I would always endeavor to bring the new. All right, so I spend like 4 hours, updating and imputing some new stuff, and I'm really, really excited what I'm going to be sharing with you in the next couple of days. All right, I hope that you're excited as well. So I want you to open your mind. The chat box is there. Alex is here to help us to moderate. Ask me questions. You can use the chat box. Maybe at some point, I would, if need be that you need to talk back to me, you really wanted to, voice your question rather than typing it. Some people are quite better, by saying it rather than typing. I would, we would open the floor. We would ask questions. In fact, I want to make it interactive as much as possible. The only challenge is, because everybody's at home, you would have your young ones, maybe by, your room or where you are, and there might just be noise there. So hence we have muted everybody so that we can have a clean recording, because I know quite a number of you guys, you want to go back to the recording, and listen to it. And you wouldn't just like it where, there's noise everywhere and we don't have control of it. So that's the reason why we have muted it at the moment. But like I said, I want to talk, I want you to ask me questions. I want to feel your pulse, make it more interactive. So you can use the chat box, but at some point, if there's a need for you to ask me questions. If you raise your hand, the Zoom is quite good. Just raise your hand. We would unmute you, and you can ask your questions, and I can give you an appropriate answer by God's grace. Okay. So without further ado, let us go into why we are here today. So vulnerability and patch management. All right. So there is a kind of double barrel, cost model. All right. Vulnerability management is different from patch management. All right. But from my experience, like I said, I've been a practitioner in cybersecurity in the last 18 years, so I've been around for a while. So I've seen a lot of, good and best practices. I've had the opportunity to work for so many organizations here in the UK, especially, my career, spanned, a few years now, work in the financial sector, work with telco, I've done with, some work for oil and gas, major energy company, just name it. Quite, I've worked for, wealth management, few insurance companies as well, and also the government, public sector. So I've seen a lot of good practices here and there. And those are the best practices I'm going to be communicating to you. It's pretty much in the next 3 days, it's just going to be more of transfer of knowledge. Okay, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to take a practical approach. It's not going to be conventional. We will go through the slides, but I am not a really slide person. I will read it to you, but I will try as much as possible to call out areas that are very, very important. So when I say areas that are very important, what recruiters are looking for, what potential employers are looking for when it comes to vulnerability, and patch management. So I said earlier on that this is a double barrel course, because vulnerability management and patch management are different. But you see, in the real world, when you go look for a job, all right, knowledge of both can be an advantage for you. All right. So while this course is not so much about patch management, but I thought that when you understand patch management, when you go for an interview, you could be head and shoulder high, than your competitors, because you can talk from both worlds, all right? Because in itself, you can't separate them. So whilst vulnerability management is all about, finding, what is wrong with the weakness, patch management could be about fixing what is wrong. So you can imagine if you understand what is wrong, but you can also advise the business, what they can do, to fix what is wrong. All right. So it means that, you would be head and shoulder higher, than your competitor. You will just have that advantage over any other person that perhaps, that they are, interviewing for that role. So please, I want you to listen to me carefully. The patch management is going to come pretty much later in the training. It's not going to be, now, pretty much later, maybe on the third day on Friday. That's when I'm going to be touching on the patch management. So what I will do now is, so that I don't distract you with my nice shining hair and my beers, I'm going to turn off my video so that I can focus on the real thing. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're still here. So let's rock and roll. Okay. So we will start by, so this is my course curriculum. Earlier on, somebody was asking me, because we put out this message, out yesterday, because we want people to be part of it. And someone was asking me that, what is the, what are you going to be covering, in this training? And I was just too busy, to respond or to reply to that text message. So if the person is here, I do apologize. It's just that I am busy, but this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to look at the introduction to, our vulnerability assessment. We will look at key definitions. Definitions are very, very important, or in other words, what you call key terminologies. You see, I recognize that quite a number of people that are listening to me today, you are new in the vulnerability management space. As a matter of fact, maybe cybersecurity is new to you, all right? But don't worry, all right? I don't want you to panic. One thing that we do very well at Smart Learning is we have that ability, to take you, to work with you from where you are, build you up until you become confident, all right, in this particular subject area. And that's one thing that is common to myself and all of my tutors, likes of Harry Boje, I think maybe I saw Pelumi here as well, and a few other people that are here. We just have that ability. We can handhold you, and build you up from foundation level to intermediate, and from intermediate to you becoming advanced. All right, so we usually start our training by talking about key definitions, our key terminologies. And for you that you already past the stage, when I say past the stage, you have it all figured out, you know what asset is, so that's fine. So if you would allow me, let me build other people up that are not at your level at the moment, so that they can catch up with you as well. All right, so it is not, so for someone that have maybe a bit of experience, so this is not basic in its entirety. It's just that we recognize that quite a number of people are here today, that they have come from project management background, they are business analysts. In fact, some of them, they do not even have a career. This is new to them in its entirety. So we want to start with the key definitions. Then we'll move into what we call types of security threats. We'll talk about worm, spyware, backdoor, rootkit, and also, DOS and DDoS as well. And why this is very important is because, we're talking about vulnerability here. So it's also important for us to know what is, bad in the wild, all right? The bad things, that could exploit the vulnerabilities or the weakness, all right, in your control or in your asset. So it's important we know a few of them as well. Then we'll move on to talk about why is vulnerability management required. All right, one thing that characterizes what we do here at Smart Learning, again, is the ability to answer three very, very important questions. We answer the question of the why, we answer the question of the what, then we also answer the question of the how. It's very, very important for you to know that. And that is what we'll do. So we don't just raise you through, we just raise through, the slide or the information that we have here, but we try to answer very, very, very good questions. There's a saying, it's not even a saying, there's a quote. It said those, that understand the why of a thing, it said those that understand the how of a thing, they would always have a job. It said, but no, those that actually understand the concept of the why, people that can ask the why question, all right, they would always be the job. So it's my desire, when I train people, for most of my students, why I try as much as possible on our platform to answer the how question so that you can get a job. But we also try as much as possible to build you up so that you can be a leader in your own right, by answering the why question. So in its entire, all throughout this training, and for those that's going to be joining us later, we're going to be answering the why, the how, the why, the what, and also the how question as well. All right, so we're going to be talking about the why of vulnerability management. All right, classes of vulnerability. We will go through common vulnerabilities and also exposure, which we call the CVE list. We'll talk about scoring system. How do you score vulnerability that is found? We'll talk about how to conduct vulnerability. All right. We'll talk about the how. All right. I'm not sure whether the 3 days would actually allow me, or whether there will be enough time to actually carry out or perform a vulnerability scan, but you see, carrying out the vulnerability scan is just like, 5%, of vulnerability management in its entirety. All right. So it is not, vulnerability management is not actually the scanning itself, but understanding the concept. And if you understand the concept, for you, if I give you a tool to carry out the scanning, the tooling are usually automated. It's just like a click and click and click away. In a day, you can get the concept if you wrap your head around it. So scanning itself is not difficult, but I want you to focus on learning the concept in its entirety. All right. Type of scanner, there's a few that is out there. In fact, there are quite a number of them. So there's some that we call the open source scanners. Open source in the sense that anybody can write a code into it. They are in the wild. If you go to the internet, they are free. You can use them. Then we also have the commercial ones as well, which are licensed for organization. So we're going to look at different type of scanner. But more importantly, if time permits me, I'm also going to be teaching you or showing you some other scanner. Most of us, we are aware now that we're in the machine era. All right, machine era. So you hear a lot about artificial intelligence. A lot of people hear that now. We hear about cloud. All right. And sometimes we do not understand what some of these things mean or what actually powers them. All right. So we also, if time permits, I'm going to be showing you some other scanners, all right, that is used specifically, all right, in an OT environment. There's an environment that we call OT, which is the operational technology. All right, there are different scanners that are used in that environment. All right, so if you want to go into proper engineering, all right, you want to go work for maybe manufacturing where they don't use the conventional computers that we use, or they use more of robotics. All right, so there are specific scanners that work in that kind of environment. But conventional environment, like the financial services, advertising, telco, just standard scanner will work in such environment. So if time permits, I will show you a few as well, and you can learn from it. Then we're also going to be talking about authentication and also on authentication, the vulnerability scan. In other words, there are some scannings that we call credential, scanning, and we also have another one on credential. So authentication there just means that it is credential, like a username and password. All right. Then the unauthenticated one is you don't require a username and a password, to scan your environment. We're going to talk about that as well. We're going to talk about the pros and also the cons of each of those scanning methodology. We look at creating a report. We would also talk about vulnerability essentials. This is where we're now getting into the nitty-gritty of vulnerability management. We look at assessing risk, analyzing vulnerability assessment report. We look at what we call the National Vulnerability Database and how also to find relevant vulnerability and patch information. So just recently, there was a 0-day vulnerability that was all out in the wild. And I think that kept everybody on their toes. It is called the Log4, I believe. Some of us, you come across, do anybody remember the name of that vulnerability, the 0-day vulnerability? Anybody? Let's test our knowledge there. Do anybody remember that? Anybody? Yeah, Tolu. So Log4j. So that's that one. All right. Okay. So thank you for that. Somebody says my voice is low. Kazim, can you hear me very well? Someone says my voice is low. All right, Alex, can you hear me very well? Just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you for that, Patrick, and also Tolu. Yeah, thanks for that. So vulnerability, so 0-day vulnerabilities are usually, why you would need the National Vulnerability Database, okay? So you need to know what's going on, and you also need information, all right? So in the real world, where there is a vulnerability, so a 0-day attack, like the Log4j, all right? Everybody will be falling over each other. They want to ensure that their environment is not vulnerable, to that particular attack. So what usually I require from you, if you're working as a vulnerability management specialist, all right, is to scan your environment to know, what you are vulnerable to. But a lot of times, even when you get the vulnerability, you make reference to vulnerability database, which we call the MVD. to find out more information about that particular vulnerability. Then we'll go on to evaluating investigation security and also alert as well. I'm going to be sharing with you some practical steps, all right? Some of these steps is, you see, you cannot, as it were, read them in a book. Even if you Google everything, all right, you will read it, but you might not just understand it. And this is where the difference that it makes when someone like Horse, all right, I'm not being braggadocious now, there's a whole lot of people that understand the concept of vulnerability management, but when you meet such individual, they will be able to put context, out to whatever that you have read, all right, maybe on the internet or on a piece of paper or on the textbook. So we're going to be looking at how do you take a piece of vulnerability, evaluate it, investigate security alert, and also any adversaries that you receive as well. Triaging is very, very important, which is vulnerability triaging, is how you prioritize your vulnerability. So there's so many school of thought on prioritizing vulnerabilities. So if you read it, people will tell you maybe you prioritize on the basis of the ranking of the severity of the vulnerability. Someone else can tell you maybe you prioritize on the basis of the criticality of the asset. And it varies from organization to organization. So you have to understand your organization. And like I said, if you understand the concept of the triaging, it would help you to determine what vulnerability to fix at a particular time. All right. Then we're also going to look at determining vulnerability frequency, calculating vulnerability severity, weighing imported risk factor, performing risk assessment, relationship between vulnerability management, risk management, and also penetration testing as well. All right. Then we're going to look at what vulnerability management is, a bit of the workflow, the entire life cycle of vulnerability management. We're also going to look at vulnerability management maturity model, all right, by SANS, all right. So remember I said earlier on that the whole thing is I would take you from the foundation, I will bring you up to the intermediate, and hopefully, maybe a little bit, to the more advanced level. So if you secure a role and you start to design or write vulnerability management maturity model for your organization, you're probably, have a very high level in your organization. So usually, people at the CISO level, people at the senior management level, they get involved in things like the vulnerability management workflow, they design it, they get involved in the vulnerability maturity model as well. So hopefully I'm going to be able to show you some stuff, but not into details. If again, you decide or you choose us as your preferred training organization, then some of these things you will learn it when you come for, the main training itself. All right. Then lastly, patch management. What is patch management? Important of patch management, the relationship between patch management and also vulnerability management. All right, so let us now get into the real thing. All right, so now that we've set the stage about what you're going to be getting, the course curriculum, let us go to key terminologies. In other words, key definitions. Let me tell you why this is very important. I recognize that a lot of us, quite a number of us, we're new to what vulnerability management is. And I use this example a lot. You see, in every field that you find yourself, or whether you work as a nurse, or you work as a doctor, or you work as a business analyst, or you take a job as a project manager, there are common linguas, all right, that they speak in that specific industry. All right, so it is in vulnerability management and in cybersecurity in its entirety. So what this is meant to do is to help you to understand those linguas, all right, because I'm going to be going into this linguistic thing about vulnerability management, all right, but you need to understand it as well. I would try as much as possible, to take it easy on you, use use everyday example, mundane things to explain this to you. Please just follow me as I take you through this journey, all right? So vulnerability. So anytime we hear the word vulnerability, see, it is synonymous to weakness. The word vulnerability is not new. As a matter of fact, is a word that we use loosely, all right? So where we come from, when we see somebody that, especially not where we come from, but this side of the word, we see somebody will say, we use the word they are vulnerable. They're vulnerable because they are weak. So someone can have a short leg, a short arm, or maybe they're disabled on the part of their body. Such people, we call them vulnerable because someone can take advantage of them. So I want you to imagine in your head that some of the movie that we watch sometimes as well. So somebody is not, maybe their feet is short. If someone attacked them, all right, chances are they may not be able to run very fast to catch up with the person, all right, or to fight back because of the bad leg or the bad arm, they have, all right. So in other words, we can say such person, is vulnerable, all right, is vulnerable. Or sometimes, if you think about your home, if you open your door or you left your door ajar, all right, maybe for maybe you didn't just remember, all right, we can say that your house or your home is vulnerable to attack, all right. So attack could be physical attack, or it could be attack. So not physical attack, it could be vulnerable to theft, physical theft. Somebody can walk into your house and make away with valuable goods or information in your home. So vulnerability is a weakness which can be exploited by cyber attack or cyber criminal, to gain unauthorized access or to perform unauthorized action on a computer system. So when I'm talking about vulnerability here, I'm talking about it as it relates, to computer system, all right? As it relates to your mobile phone, your laptop, the website, your mobile app, your web app, all right, is as it relates to anything techie, all right? Anything techie, all right? So if you find any weakness in such, technical gadgets that you have, we can say they are vulnerable to attack, all right? Somebody can gain unauthorized access into them, all right? Threat. Threat is any person or a circumstance or event that has the potential to cause a damage to an organizational asset or business function, all right? You see, I mentioned earlier on that anything that is weak, all right, on your gadget, i.e. computer or, a website, we call it vulnerable. But it would take somebody, all right, to exploit that vulnerability, all right? So anyone that can actually exploit that vulnerability, so whether it is a physical person or whether it is a program or a code or a script, we call that threats because they can cause damage, to that asset. All right, then what is an asset? So asset is any function, a task, a capability, an equipment, a physical gadget, your laptop, your desktop, your mobile app, all right? Anything that you consider valuable, all right? It is an asset. I use this example a lot. So if you think about, your girlfriend or your wife, most women, they buy jewelries, they buy things that are very, very expensive, especially if their husband have got a deep pocket, you know what I mean? But most of their jewelries, they keep it very, very safe. As a matter of fact, if you go to some homes, what they normally do is they could have like a vault in that home, where they keep their valuables, all right? So the reason why they keep it is because those things, they can place monetary value on it, okay? And if you can place monetary value on it, then it becomes an asset. So in the computer world, all right, in cybersecurity, anything that we can call anything that we can place value on. So whether it is a process, a bank process, so whether it is a function, whether it is an equipment, then that thing we call it an asset. I want you to take note of that a lot because we're going to be using the word asset, asset, asset. If you do not remember anything I've just said now, remember that I said that anything that you can place value on, that thing is an asset. Think about a bank, all right? I want us to take our mind, to a bank now, all right? So I want us to take our mind, to a bank. If you walk into a bank today. So whether you bank, with with a bank in the UK or anywhere in the world, all of the banks, okay, they have what we call, processes. So if you want to obtain a loan, for example, in a bank, you will walk in there. You could also do it online now with this era of COVID. All right, they will take you through certain process. It means that you have to fill in a form, or you have to place a call, to the bank rep. They will ask you a few questions. They will collect your information. They will process the information on the back of that. They will vet you. Then they will not come back and say whether you're qualified for that loan or not. All right. So the process, that they took, from the time, that they took your information to process them, that process itself is an asset. Do you know why? All right. If that process, all right, has got vulnerability in it, it means it is weak. Maybe someone can circumvent that process or the controls that is in that process, then that bank will be in a deep problem. So it means that an unqualified individual, could go to the bank and request for a loan, and they will get it. Bear with me. All right, sorry about that. So it means that unqualified individual, all right, that understand the weakness in that process, all right, they could circumvent the control and they would get a loan. All right, they're unqualified, maybe by reason of maybe they're bad credit, they're untrusted. Then the bank is going to be in a big problem. So to the bank, the process of obtaining a loan is valuable to them, so that it can be considered an asset. All right, guys, are you following me? It's important that I get feedback because it helps me. Then I can gauge your knowledge to know where you are, and perhaps I can also, provide further information. Are you following me?
Yes, please.
All right, fantastic. Please, if you need clarification on anything, do not be afraid to ask. I'll be more than happy, all right, to stop and answer you. All right, so that is a bank, all right? Anything that you can place value on, all right? Then risk. The risk is exposure, all right, to danger, harm, and also losses as well, all right? So the risk here now, we've talked about asset. We know what vulnerability is. We understand threat, okay? So whatever that happens, if, for example, that bank process was circumvented, all right, and somebody could apply for a loan and they can get away with it, all right, unqualified, okay, what could happen to the bank is they will suffer a loss, okay? And if many people, okay, you know what it is now, if somebody understand that, oh, there's a weakness there and you could get a loan for free, everybody will go there, all right? They will just go and take the loan. I read something in the news about the, the bounce back loan. And there were this, I can't remember their name now, but from the description on BBC, they were Russians, all right? The Russians that have lived here for a very long time. I think they were able to spot some weakness around, the bounce back loan for some reason. And they were able to scoop from the government over £2 million, all right? According to them, they register different organizations and, fake businesses and all of that. So they keep just getting the money. They were caught and they were, going to send them to jail anyway. And the government had also been able to recover some of the money. So you see, if this vulnerability that we're talking about, if somebody is able to take advantage, of the weakness in a process or in an asset, it could result into the risk. And risk could be, the bank will suffer a loss, all right? It could even suffer damage and also harm people as well. Information asset, all right? So there are two words there, information and also asset. I want you to listen to me carefully. Remember, I've already defined what an asset is. And when I define what an asset is, I said anything valuable, anything that you can place value on. And I gave an example of ladies, all right, your nice jewelries and the vault and all of that. Okay, please remember that. But here, a combination of two words, information and also asset. So an information asset is a body of information that has financial value to an organization, even to an individual. Let me give you an example. You see, your mobile phone can be an asset, okay? Because you can place a value on it, okay? I'm not talking about techno phone, all right? No prejudice to people that use techno, all right? If you take techno phone now from Africa, you bring it here, all right? It values nothing, okay? In fact, if you say you want to repair, somebody will just throw it at your face that this is nothing, all right? But some other phones are much more valuable, all right? If you take a piece of maybe iPhone and you trade it in, maybe you can still get some very good money on it, okay? Because of the much value that is placed on it, okay? So I want you to hold that thought there, iPhone, okay? But what does iPhone contain? iPhone contains information. What information is in your iPhone? Most likely people would have, contact information of their loved ones, their friends, their colleague, okay? All right. And so that when you want to place a call, you click on the name and you place the call. All right. So information on one hand, asset, physical asset, the phone on the other hand. You see, when you combine both of them, we make it information asset. As a matter of fact, you can have a techno phone, or you could even have one of those, Nokia phone, the 339. I can't remember that phone now. Some of us has used that, that phone before, that very, very rugged phone. But you see, if you trade such rugged Nokia phone today on eBay, you will probably get like 5p for it, or less than £5. You will agree with that. That's not a lot of value. But you see, if you are highly networked as a person, all right, say say Joe Biden, all right, or your uncle, is a friend to Joe Biden, all the, you're highly networked, you know all the rich people in this world, or not even the rich people, great people, sorry, I use the word, but great people in this world, they're your friend, you went to the same university, or your dad knows them, and you have access to their telephone number. You would store that telephone number on your phone, not you probably will not write it in your diary, it would be on your phone. All right, these people are very, very important. Okay, some people are dying to meet them every day. All right, because by reason of their position, they could open doors for you. All right, very important people. Okay, if you have their connection and if you have their mobile number on your phone, it makes that your Nokia phone that is less than 5p or £5 to even be more valuable. All right, so the information on your physical asset can make that asset more valuable. So if you think about an organization, they would have data, all right, different kind of data, structured and unstructured. This is not about data protection class or data class. If you want to learn about that, Mr. Ariboje can help you with that. But whether structured and unstructured, so you could have maybe a physical asset, a server that is in a data center somewhere, all right? And that asset itself, if you place a value on it, it might not be up to £2,000, but you could have millions of records of people, on that physical asset that you could sell your product to. So that information that you have on your asset, which is the server, makes that server more valuable. All right, more valuable. All right, not all of this, because I'm going to be using them as an example later on as well. Do you understand information asset now, before I move on? Talk back to me. Do you understand information asset?
Yes, please. Yes.
All right. The older terminologies that we have here, and I'm going to scan through this one because later on I'm going to be talking about them in much more details. All right. So we have vulnerability assessment. So it is the process of identifying. I want you to note the word process, okay, because I'm going to be coming back to it. Is the process of identifying, quantifying, prioritizing, all right, or in other words, you rank the vulnerability in a system. Remember, we talked about what vulnerability is. We said vulnerability is a weakness, okay? But when you find a vulnerability, okay, when you identify a vulnerability, all right, you can quantify the vulnerability, put them together and number them accordingly. You can prioritize them. Prioritizing means that you rank them, all right? So maybe one vulnerability, could be high in severity, the other one could be low in severity, and the other one could be medium in severity. All right, you rank them accordingly. When you do this, you're actually doing vulnerability assessment. Okay, so hold that thought. I don't expect you to get it at once. I'm still going to come back, and teach you further on this. All right, scanning. Scanning is an automated process. I want you to note the word automated. So that's why I said earlier on is, you see, scanning in itself is not difficult. I'm telling you, when you get a job, you come and thank me. It's not difficult because it is automated. There are some very clever software that is there that once you set it up, it will just do the job. All right. But because you can scan doesn't mean that you understand the concept of vulnerability management. It's much more deeper than just scanning. So it is a process of proactively inspecting the potential point of exploit on the computer network application to identify security holes. In other words, so when we say, we have a weakness in a system, we're saying that there is a security hole, in that weakness. All right, security hole that someone can exploit. Interestingly, I use this example a lot because I'm from Africa. All right. And where I grew up from, we see a lot of reptiles, especially, maybe in the raining season, you just see all sorts coming out from the from the bush. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you see a newly built house, in Africa, what people usually do to demonstrate not necessarily wealth, but to protect their asset again now, the physical house. They would kind of ring fence the house. They would put very, very tall, fence. In fact, as a matter of fact, they could also put some barbed wires around the fence as well to further protect, all right, their home or their assets, the house, all right? But not too long, you will notice that there's a crack in the wall. And if you're not too long, you begin to see reptiles, like lizard, they will be able to, penetrate that wall, and it won't be too long, you see them everywhere. All right. So I want you to think about, again, I'm using an example. Think about that wall, all right, that surround your house, all right. Have a mental picture of one, as a type of control, okay? The crack in the wall is the security hole, all right? The lizard is the threat actor or the threat agent, okay? Think about it. I'm still going to use that example later. Think about the wall as a control. The wall is supposed to protect the house, isn't it? From physical theft or from bad people, all right? Is a means of protection or a form of protection, all right? Think about the crack. So whatever caused the crack, we do not know, all right? It could be as a result of change in weather or blah, 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 all right? But think about the crack in the wall, all right, as the weakness of the security hole. Then think about the lizard, all right, as the threat, all right, agent, okay? So you can see now that I've already explained what control is, but I'm going to come back to that. Then what is vulnerability management, okay? It is the process of identifying, evaluating, treating. I want you to note here, evaluating, three things. Okay, and also reporting. Because if you think about assessment, it didn't tell us that we're going to be treating the vulnerability. It didn't tell us that we're going to be solving the problem of the vulnerability. But when you come to management, that's when you start to evaluate, all right, that vulnerability. That's when you also start to treat them and report that vulnerability to who needs to know, all right? Don't worry, okay, because I'm still going to explain it a little bit further, all right, even much more better than this. All right, then we'll talk about the controls, all right. Controls are measures taken to prevent, detect, I want you to note that word, prevent, detect, minimize, or sometimes eliminate risk to protect the integrity, confidentiality, and the availability of the information. I know this is information overload for you, but don't worry, because further down, in the slide, I would explain it better. All right. So I gave an example earlier on of when you think about a wall, all right, that you built in your home to protect your home. All right, just a bit of a quiz for you. What do you think? Do you think that wall is a type of preventative control, or is a type of detective control, or is it deterrent? All right, talk back to me. Well, you can't talk back to me, but if you can type. The wall that I gave you an example, do you think is a preventative control? Is it detective control? Or do you think it's just another type of control, maybe a deterrent? So let's see what people are saying. Tolu said preventative. Ola said preventative. Ike said preventative. Any other person? Okay, someone said preventative and deterrent. Tony Abalaji. Okay, Tony said it can also have a deterrent as well. Okay, all right, thank you. Chinwe said it could serve both. Okay, yeah. Someone said James Brown, physical and preventative. All right, so thank you for all of that. Great, keep sending that in. It just confirms, that you're following and you understand what this is all about. All right, we'll find out later whether it is both or whether it is none. All right, so let's move on. Okay, you see this particular slide. What I've now done is everything that I've said before now, all right, I've now just kind of put them together, all right? So you see this flow that you can see here. You can see on the left-hand side, we have system design. Also on the left-hand side, we have incident. In the middle, we have what we call design model. Then we have what we call vulnerability, asset vulnerability. We have weak, asset weakness. Then we have the arrow pointing in this direction. All right, here it said attacking threat. Okay, it's pointing in the asset vulnerability. It's pointing in both. Then we also have the threat agent. All right, then we have the countermeasures. Okay, so take your focus away from here. All right, this incident, because we're going to come back to that later. I just want you to focus pretty much on this one and that one. Okay, so you could see here the arrow here, countermeasures. We already know what weakness is. All right, so you could have an asset, your house, for example, or anything logical. Okay, in the world of cybersecurity, and we already understand the concept of weakness, that it could be weak. Okay, but you see here, this arrow is pointing into this weakness. What it simply means that this threat agent, all right, cyber criminals, the bad people, all right, what they are trying to do is, to exploit, all right, the weakness in this asset, all right, hence that arrow pointing in that direction, all right. But what this one is not telling us, it says countermeasure, all right. Let me quickly explain what that is. So countermeasure is the same, it's not a loose word, but it's the same, almost the same word for security control. All right, we British, we use the word security control more as opposed to countermeasures. So the word countermeasures is a military term, all right, military term, all right. So if you watch any of these war movies, perhaps you understand what I'm talking about. So countermeasures and the word security controls, they are the same, all right? They are the same, but this side, we use more of, security, British, we use more, British and UK, we use more of security control, but Americans, they use more of the word countermeasures, all right? So it's important that you know that. So here, what is essentially saying here is you're applying a control or a countermeasure, all right, to this vulnerability. And when you apply a countermeasure to a vulnerability, what you're doing is you're reducing, the chances of this threat agent exploiting the weakness, all right, in this asset. What do I mean by that? Okay, so again, if I take you back, I said something earlier on that think about a physical house, all right? A physical house is an asset, all right? The reason why you put a door, all right, in front of, or the reason why you put a door, or sometimes even gate, to the road, maybe to, I'm trying to look for the word now. When you put a door, to your house, what you're trying to do is, the entrance, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. The entrance that leads into your property, which is your house, you're trying to protect it. All right. So if you think about not having a door at all, so it means that anybody can just walk into your house. Okay. All right. So if you do not have a door at all, then we can say your asset, which is a type of house, is vulnerable. Okay. But if you put a door there, all right, whatever door, whether it's a reinforced door, a remote control door, or whatever it is, then that door, a countermeasure, a security control, we protect the vulnerability in your asset, which is your house. Then cyber criminals, not even cyber criminal now, what do we call them in the UK here? Miscreants, people that commit burglary, okay? They will, so anyone that could commit burglary, for example, now could be likened to be a threat agent. So they will not be able to, take advantage, of your house not having a door, all right, because you already placed a door there. And that door actually reduces the risk of physical theft in your house. All right. So I know you understand that. Let me now take you back to your mobile phone. So your mobile phone is a physical asset, but I take in this case now. All of our mobile phone, most of us, we would have, maybe a 6-digit, PIN that we use to protect it. Okay. So if you think about that 6-digit PIN, that is a type of security control or countermeasures. Your asset is the phone. All right. The phone without the PIN, all right, or the password is vulnerable. When you put a PIN there, what it does is it reduces the chances of somebody hacking into that phone, which is the threat agent. Okay. So this is what it's all about. So everything I've been teaching you, all right, about the terminologies, this picture that just kind of, capture it. All right, this illustration rather kind of just capture it. Okay, let's move on. Then what this is now, we've already talked about the asset, the countermeasures, and how we can apply controls, to reduce risk as much as possible. All right, so if you look to my to my left here, you can see vulnerabilities. All right, so you could look at here, we said preventative control, detective control, we now say likelihood. All right, so we're saying here that this vulnerability, look at here, this agent, all right, this bad person, all right, thieves and all of that, cyber criminals, all right, if there is a vulnerability within your asset, they could exploit that vulnerability. So it means that, so I want you to think about your physical asset again, that in your home, there is no door, all right? Or the door is broken, okay? If you live in one of those bad areas, where you have a lot of people that, yeah, I don't want to call them names, but if you live in that sort of bad areas, so because the door that leads to your home is broken, what that simply means is if someone can exploit that weakness, all right, they could, get in front of, or the entrance to your house and just easily get into your house because there is no door or the door is broken. So what that simply means is they exploit the vulnerabilities in your home. And what is the vulnerability? Weak door or no door at all. All right. And what that could result in, all right, it could result in loss of valuables. All right. They could go in there, take your mobile phone, take your passport, something that's very, very important to you, they could make a way, they could steal it. So hence the arrow here that a threat agent exploit vulnerabilities, then it could result into a risk and it could have, an impact on you. All right. So on this side, we're now saying that you could apply controls, all right, to those vulnerabilities, all right, to reduce them as much as possible. Hence, I said earlier on, if I go back here, when I asked the questions around control, whether the control is preventive or it is detective, and you gave me an example of, this control could be this control could be preventive. It could also be a deterrent as well. All right. So in cybersecurity, we apply controls, to vulnerability. All right, to reduce that vulnerability as much as possible. All right. So we do not completely eliminate vulnerability. All right, we reduce them by applying controls. All right. So let me test your knowledge here before we move on. Can you give me an example of a detective control? Anybody? Can you give me an example of a detective control? Any example? Tony, CCTV, yeah. Camera, fees. Yeah, James Brown, antivirus. Okay, detective, yeah, I totally agree. Bolaji say firewall, all right. Alarm, Jacob, that's correct. Any other person? Smoke alarm. I like that one. Alarm, smoke alarm. Yeah, that's correct. Tony, yeah, password is not a detective control. All right. It's something that can detect. You could say motion detector, that's a detective control. Yeah. Infrared sensor, correct. Kazim. Keep sending it in. Any other person? Tolu, RFID. Yeah, RFID. Yeah. Okay, any other person? Metal detector, yeah, Chiwe, that's correct. Chiwe, you've been watching all of this border patrol. Door alarm, Olariwaju, that's correct. Any other person? All right, okay, yeah, but you're absolutely spot on, everybody. Thanks for that. Sniffer, Tony says sniffer dog. Oh, Jesus, sniffer dog. Okay, yeah, well, sniffer dog, actually, you will see the bad person, then they would back. All right, okay, that's correct. Then Caroline said cameras as well. All right, yeah, spot on. So let's look at now threat. So you remember I said here, let me quickly take you back so that you would understand a bit of this. If I take you back, oops. Okay, apologies there. All right, so if I take you back, so I was talking about, threat agent, threat. So threat are those people, it could be a thing, it could be a piece of software that is waiting to exploit vulnerability. All right, so if you think about a physical person, the door to your house is broken. All right, you did not lock, your car. All right, you left it unlocked. So anybody that comes there to come and open it while you're not there, they are threat agents. So we're going to be talking about a few of them in the next couple of minutes. All right. So let's talk about cyber security threat. All right. So a cyber security threat. Now, so all the examples that I've been giving to you earlier on, you could see that I was using house, something that you could relate to. But now we're going to be going into cyber security itself. What are the threats that are out there? All right. So a cyber threat is a malicious and deliberate attack by an individual, organization. So I want you to note that. All right. It could be from an individual. It could be from an organization to gain unauthorized access to another individual organization's network to damage, disrupt or steal its asset, computer network, intellectual property, and also other forms of sensitive data. All right. So one common mission, for cyber criminals or cyber threat is to steal. All right. So if you're a Christian here, the word of the Lord says, the thief has come to steal, to kill, and also to destroy. Of course, when we say the thief, we know who we're referring to, and I'm sure that none of you is a thief here, So he said he has come to steal, kill, and also to destroy as well. So is cyber criminals as well. So they would enter into your network, they will steal intellectual property, all right? They will make away with sensitive data, all right? So what as those threats that is out there, we have what we call, malware attack, okay, or malware. Some people will call it malware. Malware attack are the most common form of cyber attack. Malware is defined as a malicious software, all right? So the word malicious or the word malware comes from the word malicious, all right? So malicious is not anything good, all right? So when something is malicious, it means that it is bad. It doesn't have a good intent, all right? So hence it's called malicious, all right? So every piece of software is designed to function in a particular way. And when they say function in a particular way, I mean in a way that is reasonable or sensible. You know what I mean? All right, that's every good software is supposed to function in a particular way. But you see, when you create a piece of software to function in a reverse order, then we call that software, a malware. Let me give you an example. So if you create a piece of software or a script, and that script is supposed to enter into somebody's email or enter into somebody's laptop or phone and steal, not let me not use the word steal now, and enter into somebody, or they download it knowingly or unknowingly onto their laptop or their phone, and that piece of script or software now target that individual's contact, all right, collect all of the contact information, maybe telephone number and name, and send it out, all right, and take it and send it to a different location, all right, where you didn't authorize it, then that piece of software can be called a malicious software, all right? It can be called a malware, all right? So if you have a piece of script that functions in an opposite way, then it's a malware, all right? So, and this includes spyware, ransomware, all right, viruses, worm, don't worry about all of those. We're going to talk about it briefly because malware is a family of all of this. It's a family of spyware. So spy, as the name is, so again, if a piece of software is downloaded on your computer and that software runs unauthorized, whereby, the way that you can see me now, all right, some of you can see my shiny hair, shiny head, the way you can see me at the moment. So you can imagine that, you write a script, and that script unknowingly for me, I downloaded it into my computer, and it can snoop on me, it can monitor me, it can collect information, it can turn on my camera when I'm not aware. Then that is a type of, spyware. All right. So when we think about malware, all right, it is a compound word, that contains ransomware, virus, and also malware. These are, the threat that you want to protect your network against. Hence, you have to constantly look for vulnerability in your network, all right, to ensure that to ensure that malware cannot take advantage of those vulnerability. Remember, I said something earlier on that if you think about the fence that you use, to protect your house, all right, it won't be too long. The lizard, when there is a crack in the wall, the lizard will penetrate. But what a sensible landlord would do is every time there's a crack, they will get an handyman, to make sure that they block those cracks. So while they're blocking those cracks, guess what? They are applying controls, to cover the security hole in their control. So as a cyber, as a vulnerability management specialist, what you're doing all the time is you're constantly carrying out a scan against your network to ensure that, you prevent your network from malware attack. All right, criminals. So cyber criminals send malicious mail that seems to come from legitimate source, which is phishing, sorry. The user then trick into, clicking the malicious link in the email, leading to malware installation. Some of you knows all of this phishing email. You're not new to it anyway, all right? There's a common one, the Nigerian prince, some of you can relate to this, okay? The Nigerian prince, okay? So you get this, very, very bogus email saying that, there's an inheritance to be claimed somewhere. If you're interested, they just need, your help, blah, 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 blah. All right, so that's an example of a phishing email. So those emails, they're usually fake, okay, and they're targeted at stealing sensitive information like credit card details and also login details as well. So again, what does that mean? You want to ensure that, in your network, you're constantly carrying out a vulnerability scan, to identify if there's any loophole, if there's any security hole within your system that could lead to phishing attack. All right, spear phishing. All right, spear phishing is like the brother of phishing. Spear phishing is a more sophisticated form of phishing attack in which a cyber criminal target only privileged user such as system administrator or C-suite executive. All right, so where phishing now target some specific people in the organization, people that have a say, people that have an influence, like maybe an owner of business, maybe a CEO, then that is called spear phishing. Man in the middle attack, all right, occurs when cyber criminal place themselves between two communication, all right, and once the attacker interpret the communication, they may filter and steal sensitive data and also return different response to the user. All right, this is not new. Sometimes, where I'd come from, even when you're placing a call, maybe to your family, you'll be hearing someone else, voice in the background. It's not very common in this side of the world, but I don't know why it's common in Africa. But that's just an example, but you understand what I'm saying, that you see, if somebody can eavesdrop in your conversation, all right, so you can imagine if Tony sends email to Anu, all right, and somebody can be in the middle to intercept that email, to read the content of the email, and maybe to change the email in a way to change the email, then that is a man in the middle attack. So you can imagine, all right, we live in a very network, world, connected world. People are constantly making communication. So people are constantly communicating to each other. People are, transferring funds, from one location to another. So you can imagine that, if man in the middle attack is possible at all time, then, the risk will be high. People will lose, a lot. The impact will be great, because people can lose a lot of money, even an organization as well. So again, these are some of the threats, all right, that you want to look for in the process of carrying out a vulnerability scan. All right, denial of attack. All right, don't forget here, we're still talking about cybersecurity threat. Denial of attack is like flooding your system, your network, and your server with massive traffic, thereby making the system unavailable to fulfill legitimate requests. Attack can also use several infected device to launch an attack on targeted system. This is also known as distributed denial of service. Let me explain what this is. All right, and I use this a lot. All right, so Tony, think about yourself or any other person here. Just think about yourself that you are in an environment, and in that place you have about 5,000 people. All right, let's say 5,000 people. If I'm not, 5,000 people, and you are the only one bearing Tony. Please, I'm trying to explain denial of service now, because this is very important, because when I explain it, you understand the concept. It's easy for you, all right? You don't have to crack your head and be trying to imagine what this is. It's just easy for you to understand, all right? So Tony is in the midst of a crowd, and this crowd is about 5,000 of them, all right? He's the only one bearing Tony, all right? So if you imagine that somebody calls your name Tony, all right, and you can hear the person, all right, you would reply, isn't it? You would look back, or, in your own way, you could say, yes, that kind of thing. Or you could look back, if you're in a strange place and said, okay, who knows you here? And you can look back and said, oh, who's calling your name? All right, because they got your name right and they had called your name, and you can hear them and you respond. All right, so you see, a typical website behave like that. So when we go to a website, say www.smartlearninguk.com, and we take that URL and we put it in our browser and we click send. All right, what we have done is we have sent a request to our web server. The web server respond the way Tony responded to his name. All right, but I want you to now imagine that Tony is in the midst of 5,000 people. Then at once, the 5,000 people calls Tony. Tony can, probably this, you can really go gather. You know what I mean? Because like 5,000 people calls your name once, it will be difficult for you to know who to respond to, because the request came at the same time. All right. don't get me wrong, web server receive millions of requests at the same time. But here, what denial of service is saying is the request that is made to that system, maybe the web server, all right, they are fake requests. All right, the intention here is to flood that system, the web server, with so many information that it cannot undo part time. All right. So when such happen, all right, Tony, you'll be overwhelmed with the request that everybody is making to you at the same time. The same thing with the web server. The web server will not be able to respond. The response of the web server is it will die. All right. It will become slow. All right. Because the request is overwhelming. All right. I'm not going to be talking about the controls to fix, all right, denial of service here because it's beyond the scope here. We might talk about it, all right, later. But distributed denial, of attack is where now there's something we call bot in cybersecurity, all right? So bot are systems, all right, but they are malicious system with malware in it. So cyber criminals, what they do is if they wanted to target, a website, for example, or a system, they will place bot in different places, all right, across the world. And those bots, they will now be sending fake requests, all right, to the system part-time intermittently, all right, up until the time that the system will not be able to service all of those requests. They would overwhelm the system with the request, then the system could literally die, all right? So denial of service, you understand it now, then distributed is when you have different bots across, the network that is sending the same request, to the server, and the server could not respond and eventually die. All right, SQL injection. Let's move quite quickly. That we need to move quickly now. All right. Alex, how are we doing with time? I think we've spent, I don't know. This is
We've done half an hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes now.
Really? Oh goodness me. Okay, 1 hour, 30 minutes. Okay, so we have to move quickly. All right. So structural query injection attack occurs when the cyber criminal attempt to access the database by uploading malicious scripts. All right. Once successful, the malicious actor can also view changes and delete data stored in the SQL database. All right. So what does this simply mean? SQL database. Think about your Amazon. Think about eBay. All right. A lot of us over the Christmas, we shop online. We go there. I want to buy a bicycle for my son. You go there, type in bicycle. What eBay would respond, or Amazon will respond with all different types of bicycle. All right. You look at the one that is affordable and you like, and you place an order for it. All right. But what you typed in into the URL, or into the search field is bicycle. Okay. But with structural, see, the request that you put in when you type in bicycle there, what the system does is it wants to go and query the database for that information. All right, it goes into the database. So your request is bicycle. That request, the system takes it. It goes into the database behind, and it looks for it. Oh, there's the bicycle here. All right, it shows you different types of bicycle, and you make a choice. All right, but you can imagine that you're talking to the database, a language that the database understands. And what is that language? Bicycle, which is English. All right. But if you put a random character into that same search field, like pound sign, like apostrophe, and on all of that, you put that's a different language anyway. You put it there. You see, the database might not necessarily understand what that is because the database has not been wired up or designed to understand that language that you put there, which is those characters. All right. So what cyber criminals does is they carry out this exploit that we call SQL injection. All right. So what it means is they will put random numbers, all right, into the search field of an application, such a way that to confuse that application, all right, or the database, so that the database will misbehave. All right. So it's part of a reconnaissance attack that they do sometimes, to get information of the database, and they can use that to weaponize an attack against the database. All right. I've said a lot of stuff now. Reconnaissance, weaponize. Don't worry. We're going to talk about that pretty much. All right. Zero-day attack occurs when software or hardware All right, zero-day attack occurs when software and hardware vulnerability is announced and the cyber criminal exploit the vulnerability before the patch or the solution is implemented. So like the log 4J, is it 4JS or something like that, all right, which is more pretty much around JavaScript. So that is an example of a zero-day attack, all right? So something, that could potentially harm your system, all right? A vulnerability that was announced, but listen, there is no fix for it yet, okay? There is no fix for it yet. Like, I hate to use this example. When the new variant of the COVID-19 came out, everybody was just falling over each other, whether to take the new jab. We're not even sure whether the new jab actually protect it. Interestingly, I was reading on BBC today. I just stumbled across a news where, I think the leader of the Labour Party caught COVID, twice or three times. And I mean, suppose says this individual would have been, being vaccinated, you know what I mean? And they caught it twice, or maybe probably the third time. Vaccination is good, don't get me wrong, but liking that the attack, the variant is in the wild, so we're not even sure, what is actually working or not, all right? So in this case, when you suffer a zero-day attack, there's a whole lot that you need to do. I'm going to be talking about that pretty much later under our triaging and prioritizing vulnerability at some point, but let's just leave it to what it is at the moment. Then advanced persistent threats occurs when a malicious actor gain unauthorized access to your system or network and remain undetected. That is the key word. They are there, they remain undetected for an extended period of time. Ransomware is a type of malware attack in which the attacker lock or encrypt the victim's data and threaten to publish or block access to the data unless a ransom is paid. And the name actually gives it away, to be honest. They take hold of your computer and they demand for money. All right. So these are few different method of attack. I'm going to quickly just walk through this. So we have botnet. In other words, we call it bot. We have snuff attack. I'm not going to be going through all of this. It's just for information purposes. We have the TCP sync flood attack, the teardrop, the ping of death. We have phishing, spear phishing, homograph attack, brute force password guessing, dictionary attack, section hijacking, relay attack, IP spoofing, is dropping attack, and all of those possible attacks. This is for knowledge purposes. But when you come into cybersecurity training itself, some of this we would explain to you in much more details. All right. So what are the sources of cyber threat? So earlier on, I talked about the fact that malware are created by human beings. All right, because if these are piece of software or scripts, they are actually created by someone. All right, and they are created for malicious purposes. Okay, so some of the sources of this threat could be some people that we call the nation state. All right, I want you to note that. All right, nation state. Nation, as it suggests, like a country. Okay, some of you must have heard about, well, not heard, Russia anyway. You would also know China as well. Then you also know North Korea. All right, North Korea is a threat to the world because every time they are angry, they're always, saying that they will bomb the world or send a missile that would, blah, 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 blah. I think they've been very quiet since the COVID. Or I don't know why. Okay, so their leaders been quiet, since the COVID came. Okay, so those three countries, they fall under the nation state. And the nation state, they're usually seen as a rogue country, okay? Because, they employ cyber criminals, and they commit all sort of, attack on the network, such as all of those ones that we mentioned here. But the intention mainly, for nation state is they steal intellectual properties, all right? They steal what is valuable, to an organization or to a nation. So for US, all right, US, for example, their military might or their military intellect, all right, would be one of the most valuable, all right, resource for them. It would their research, all right, would be one of the most valuable, all right, for them. So nation state like North Korea, Russia, Japan, they would carry out what we call organized crime. all right, against a nation itself. Sometimes they will carry it out against, an organization. So organization that they will carry it out would be the Fortune 500 organization, likes of Apple, maybe Samsung, or any other organization that falls within that Fortune 500. All right, Amazon, so nation state, threat as a threat source will attack them, such that they want to steal valuables like research, information, or any other intellectual property. They could also attack companies that they provide. We call them CNI. Critical national infrastructure, all right? So any organization that fall within that category. So for us in the UK now, National Grill, all right, which actually supply all of our electricity, all right? So likes of this nation state, they would attack them, all right? They could attack them, all right? I remember one attack that Ukraine suffered at some point, all right? And when it was traced back, it was as a result of malware that was planted a long time ago into their into their environment, and it took they suffered an attack where the electricity went off. Their national grid actually went down for a period of time. All right, so what does this mean to you? For some of you, might think, oh, this sounds like a story to me. No, it is not a story. All right, so tomorrow you might get an opportunity to be interviewed by organization that supply, they're in the front of critical national infrastructure. Maybe they provide a backbone, telecommunication backbone, for a whole nation. So for example, BBC, all right? So you can imagine life without BBC. You can imagine life without, telecommunication. You can imagine life without our internet. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be able to speak to you like this. We'll not be able to do our job effectively. So if you work for an organization that provides such services, to a nation, all right, then one of your threat actors or threat source would be the nation state. So if you are protecting the assets that belongs to that organization, you need to be aware, of likes of Korea, China, and also Russia, countries that falls, in this category. Is this making sense to us? Talk back to me. Is this making sense? I don't know.
Yes, please, it does.
Can I get a feedback from,
Yes.
I'm not talking nonsense. I'm saying the truth, but it's just that I want to make sure that this is making sense to a whole lot of people. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So it's making sense to us. All right. So you can go and interview for that organization, and you can get into a conversation so that they can just understand. Oh, do you understand our threat source, our threat actors? That you can say, yeah, by reason of what you do, I think this group would be one of the people that you want to watch out for. All right. But again, if I take you back to vulnerability, all right, let's not lose sight. The whole idea is, so once you know your enemy, you understand your weakness, okay, which is your vulnerability, then you can protect your weakness against your enemy. That's just the whole idea. So you know your enemy, oh, nation state, you can protect it because you know your enemy, then you can protect your asset by fixing the vulnerability. Then we also have what we call the criminal groups, all right? You see, for nation state, criminal group, hackers, terrorist group, archivists, malicious insider, and corporate spies, they all have different motives, all right? Their intentions are different and their motives are different. And their modus operandi is also different as well. So this is not a threat, hunting course, all right? I'm not going to be able to go into all of those details. If I was going to be teaching you a threat hunting now, all right, then I'm going to talk about all of their modus operandi, all right, okay? Their ways, I'm going to show you all of that. But fortunately, that is not what this is all about now, all right? So what it's all about is just for you to know the sources, all right? So cyber criminal, like I said, is a group of people that comes together, all right, to commit an atrocity, all right? So cyber criminal is different from archivists. When I say it's different from them, it's because their motive is different, all right? So cyber criminal, their end goal is money, all right? So if anybody uses a ransomware as a means of attack, for you now, all right? The end goal is such that, they will ask you to pay money, all right? They will ask you to pay money, you pay money in Bitcoin and all. In fact, they collect Bitcoin these days, all right? Okay, let me ask you a question. I know quite a number of people here are Nigerians, maybe a few from other places. So a lot of people, a lot of stuff has been going on in Nigeria at the moment. Sorry, I don't intend to be political. All right. So if I say cyber criminal group and their end goal is money, which group in Nigeria would immediately come into your mind? Put it there, guys, in the chat group. Which group would immediately come to your Yahoo Boys? Somebody said Boko. All right. Yahoo Plus. I'm not sure this is Yahoo Plus. Any other one? Which group will immediately come to your mind? Kidnappers. I like the word kidnappers. This is Okafor. It seems you have lived in Nigeria for a very long time. All right. Okay. Politicians. All right. Cyber attack. You'll be judged. Okay. Yeah. So you get the gist. All right. So what I want you to take away from here, don't cram it. All right. Just know that the model operandi is different and their end goal is also different as well. All right. So why nation state will go for intellectual property? Criminals is all about money. Archivists, that one is not about money. All right. It's more about social revenge. All right. So, for example, now, if Elon Musk say, if Elon Musk says, I hate LGBT people, let me just use that word, I mean, no, nothing against the LGBT, but let's say he says, I hate the LGBT people. All right. So his website, they could hack it. An archivist, they could motivate themselves and say, what? Why did you say this? They can hack his Twitter account, hack his Facebook account, even go after, his company and deface it. So theirs is all about social revenge. Okay, it's not about, the motive is not about money. Okay. Then we also have the archivists as well and the terrorist group. So I'll leave it at that. I'm just trying to explain the concept, so that when you pick up a book, you read it, then you get what it is. I hope this is fine, guys. Guys, I hope that is fine. Alex?
Yes, definitely, sir.
Okay, all right. So let's move on quickly. Now, I wanted to talk to you about why, okay? So we've been talking about a lot since, which I believe to a large extent, you have really enjoyed, what I've been talking to you about, which I believe you have enjoyed it. All right, so let's now talk about the why. So, and which I said earlier on that we're going to be talking about the why, the what, and also the how. The plan today, actually, and I'm going to move quite quickly now, is to talk about the why, the what, and the how. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I will try, okay? So the why. Okay, so whilst, vulnerability management is all great and nice, and you should know it, but in interview, to actually convince someone to give you a job, a lot of times they just want to, it's not so much of how the scanner work, but what is driving vulnerability management, which is the why question. What is the driver? Okay, what is the driver? Why should I, invest in a vulnerability management tool? All right, why should we be doing one? All right, the why, and this is what this few slides is all about. All right, so some compliance framework, they clearly call for vulnerability management and security assessments to be done. All right, compliance framework. So number one, PCI DSS, ISO 27001 and 2, SOC, section 401, the GLBA, the EPA, the FISMA, and also the NIST. So all of this that you can see here, they are all example of different compliance framework. All right, GDPR is not here. So GDPR did not explicitly says that you should carry out vulnerability management. All right, but impliedly, for you to comply to GDPR, you must be carrying out vulnerability management. We're still going to talk about that later. All right, so let's look at what some of the regulators says. For example, PCI DSS, if you look at some of the requirements, version 2.2, I'm not sure if this is the latest, but whatever the latest is, the requirement around vulnerability management, I'm sure it's just standard across all of the versions. So version 6, requirement 6.1, it says establish a process to identify security vulnerability using reputable outside source for security vulnerability information, assigning a risk ranking. Okay, so you can see here risk ranking. So he started talking about vulnerability assessment, all right, to newly discover security vulnerabilities. Then 6.2 says ensure that all system components and software are protected from known vulnerabilities by installing applicable vendor applied security patch. Install critical security patches within 1 month of the release. Okay, so this is PCI DSS. So if you work for an e-commerce company, so like you work for eBay, you work for Jumia, you work for Konga, you work for Amazon, anywhere or any system where business, where card, 16-digit card, credit card or debit card information is being processed, all right, which is governed by PCI DSS, then there is a requirement, to carry out vulnerability scanning, assessment, and management. All right, so PCI DSS drives the need for vulnerability management. So you see, you can, in an interview, you see, they may just want to have a conversation with you. So for example, now, if you're going to go interview for an organization and you've already looked them up, that they process money, sorry, not process money, they process card, then it's no brainer, all right, why vulnerability management should be on the top chart for them in terms of what they do. All right, does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So ISO 27001. So basically 27001 Annex 12.6, 12.2, 6 and 1, it locks into 3 categories. It says here, timely identification of vulnerability. So you can see here, this is ISO is the best standard, all right, or the de facto best practice that everybody follows, or most organizations, okay? But it says here under this particular control, timely identification of vulnerability. I know you might not know what ISO is. Some of you might not even know what PCI DSS is, all right? This is what we offer in Smart Learning, all right? Part of our course module, which at some point we'll get the opportunity to share with you, if you decide to do this training with us, we would also teach you ISO 27001, all right? So ISO 27001 has that annex, all right, which is Annex 12.6.1, and it talks about timely identification of vulnerability, assessment of organization exposure to vulnerability, proper measure considering associated risk. So this is another driver, all right? So if your organization is following the principles of ISO 27001 or they are certified to ISO 27001, then they have a requirement to ensure that vulnerability management is being carried out, in their organization. Because failure, to carry out vulnerability management, you will not be able to demonstrate your compactability. No, you will not be able to demonstrate your compliance, to the particular annex. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes, please.
All right. GDPR. What does GDPR says? All right. I don't know if Mr. Ari is here, which is our GDPR, veteran. All right. So GDPR talks about the principles, of integrity and confidentiality. It also knows that about the security principles, which require appropriate technical and organizational measure. This is under article number 32. All right. So to ensure that the level of security appropriate to the risk, and a process for regular testing, assessing and evaluating their effectiveness. So GDPR does not say go and do or carry out vulnerability management, but impliedly, you see, you cannot apply appropriate technical or organizational measure, to reduce risk or to eliminate risk without actually first finding out, your weakness. So it's practically impossible. So in other words, GDPR is suggesting that you must have first carry out vulnerability scan before you can fix your problem. Then we have EPA. EPA security rule has high level rather than specific requirement. One covering risk analysis, conduct an accurate and thorough assessment of potential risk and vulnerability to, electronics, personal health information, all right, which is the EPHI. The other covering risk assessment as well, management, which says here implement security measures sufficient to reduce the risk and vulnerability to reasonable and also appropriate levels. So again, if for any reason, well, not for any reason, even if by chance, you got an interview with an health sector, all right, and you get to talk about why they should be carrying out vulnerability management, this is because EPA says so. All right. You understand the why now? All right. So the thing about regulatory compliance, like GDPR, like EPA, and a few of them, is because you see, requirements are outlined rather than in details. And I like it because most of the regulation, they are not prescriptive. All right. You know what is prescriptive? You know, when somebody is sick now and you have headache, you should go to the doctors. They will say, oh, buy Panadol or paracetamol and use it. So it is a prescription. But regulations are not like that. They don't prescribe, you know, how to meet the requirement of the regulation. All right. They outline what they are looking for. All right. They will tell you what the end is. All right. But how you get to the end, you decide. You know what I mean? So you can imagine if you want to get to the end is Manchester as a destination. So you could decide to take a plane to Manchester. You could decide to get on a bus, or you could decide, all right, to get on the to use a coach. All right, maybe coach will take you forever to get there. All right, but you could decide that is how regulation is. It outlines the requirement, tell you what the end is, what they're looking for. All right, they leave you to decide how you get to the end. So whether you scan or you use any vendor to scan it, they don't care. But you see, when they audit you, what they're looking for is how you have met those requirements. That is one thing about regulation. So regulators describe the outcome they want and the rationale for wanting it, the what and the why, leaving the how to individual organization. So GDPR will not tell you how to implement GDPR or meet the requirement under Article number 32. It leaves you to decide that. Organizations are left to work out a compliance approach that's appropriate for their operating characteristics, all right, because they are different organizations. So that's why it is not prescriptive. So how you would implement it or apply it in the financial sector will be different on how you would implement or apply it when you're working in for a public sector. All right, is this making sense, guys?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'll move on quickly now. All right, here are other reasons why vulnerability management is required. Please, I want you to note this. It's very, very important. The reason why we carry out vulnerability scan or assessment could also be as a result of system accreditation. All right. So you can imagine if you have a website that is an e-commerce website now, and you know, and your e-commerce website, or maybe you have a website that processes card details, all right, and you're going to sell that service, you know, to another company. All right, they need to be sure that your website is safe. All right. So they would ask that who has accredited your system, or how did you accredit your system? The accreditation just simply means that how can you prove, all right, that your system is safe? And one of the ways you could prove that is by, you know, showing them or demonstrating to them that you carry out a vulnerability scan on a regular basis. All right. So vulnerability management is also risk assessment as well. I'm going to talk about that later. All right. It's also risk assessment. Just hold that thought because I'm going to come back to it pretty much later in the training. Then we have the network audit. Vulnerability management provide direction for security control. It can help justify resource expenditure. It can provide greater insight into process and architecture as well. You could provide customer with assurance, just as I gave that example around accreditation. They can be satisfied or happy that, all right, your system is safe and they can do business with you. You could also prove compliance, you know, checking as well, then continuous monitoring through security scanning. All right. Okay, so I want to do 2 hours. So we still have, so what I will do is I will take you up until, is it 9 o'clock, right? Alex, for those in Nigeria, it's going to be 10. Anybody, you know?
Yes.
So, I will take you up until 2, you know, so that I don't overwhelm you today. So I have just maybe another few minutes to go. Then I will now open the floor for us to just talk about it. Ask me questions, please, you know, get your questions ready. Let's talk about it towards the end. We may not record the question and answer time so that, you know, for anybody that's got a noisy background, at least I can get some feedback from you and see, you know, how this will proceed from here tomorrow. So yeah, in the next few minutes, let me now talk to you about security, vulnerability scanning, vulnerability assessment, and management. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cover those 3 today, but let's just see what we could do in the next few minutes. All right. Give me a sec. I hope you're enjoying. I don't want to assume. I hope you're enjoying this, yeah. I hope this is good for you.
Yes, sir. It's good.
Okay. so that we don't assume anything. All right, so let's talk about vulnerability scan or vulnerability scanning. All right, so we talked about it earlier, but what I want to do in the next few minutes is just to, all right, just further, add a bit of context, all right, to it, which I believe you would appreciate. So a vulnerability scan or scanning, it would assess all possibilities, possible security in a computer, whether the computer is internal or external, all right? So you could have an internal network. You could also have what we have, external network, all right? So I want you to hold that thought, all right? It could also be, when you're scanning the communication equipment, all right, for weakness that cyber criminal can actually exploit, all right? So vulnerability scanning is automated, as I told you the other time, is an automated activity that scans infrastructure. Infrastructure just means like your computer, that has, your Windows software on it, Windows 2011, no, not Windows 2016, Windows 2018, and Windows 2019. Maybe it has other, Linux product like the Ubuntu, like the Debian, and all of those flavor of Linux, okay? It scans your infrastructure, such as IP addresses, for known vulnerability and also for misconfiguration as well. So it is automated, all right? It's automated, all right? So a vulnerability scan is an automated high-level test that looks for and also report on potential vulnerability. So when you carry out a scan, all right, what happened is, the scanner will go into your system, all right? It will scan your asset, all right? So you have to tell the scanner to scan a particular asset. It will scan your asset, then it will now report back on the vulnerabilities that it has found, all right? All right, so I'm going to talk to you about internal network and external network. But before I talk about that, let's look at the relationship between vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. All right. So vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, I usually say they are like hand in glove. All right. You cannot separate them. For you to be a good pen tester or ethical hacker, all right, you must understand the concept of vulnerability management. All right. You remember earlier on that I was using the word exploit. Okay. So, and I'm going to explain it further here, but let me take you back, jog your memory a little bit. When I was giving you an example of a house, all right? So I want you to think about, again, you, Abolaji, you have a beautiful mansion, all right? And in that mansion, you have, of course, beautiful mansion, that's your asset, okay? Because it costs a lot of money to build that beautiful mansion, all right? Please follow me. I'm trying to explain vulnerability management, vulnerability scanning, and penetration testing, all right, where they kind of meet, all right? The mansion is your asset, okay? But see, Bolaji, you cannot have a beautiful mansion without securing it. So obviously, no brainer, you would have a nice fence around it. You would have built a nice fence around it. You would have a gated fence. So you would have a gated fence. Probably, you would even have some man guard, all right? There will be a man guard there. It depends on how far you want to go. All right, you would have a man guard, but the entrance or the road that leads into the main house itself, I'm trying to picture a beautiful mansion now, would have a door, that leads in there. All right, you can't just walk in, there will be a door. All right, so your door is a control. All right, your gate, all right, and the fence is also a type of physical control as well. All right, so follow me. So, Abolaji or Tony, so I place a call to you, Tony. I said, I'm coming to your house, all right? And you said, hey, yeah, Wale, that's fine, all right? And I arrived at your address. The gate man, because maybe they know me or you've given them instructions to allow me in, all right? They opened the door for me and I approach, all right, the door that leads into your property. Please follow me, gentlemen and ladies. The door that leads into your property, I approached it. And when I got to the door, I noticed that your door is left ajar, all right? So the door is left ajar. The door is not, open in its entirety, but I could literally, if I apply maybe a little force, the door would open. I could literally see that that door is not locked. All right. Okay. So we can say to you, Abolaji or Tony, that your door or your house is vulnerable to physical theft. Because if I was a thief now, I would have just opened the door slightly and just getting into the house and make away with your valuables. All right. So we can say that. Okay. But listen. So I got at the door and I thought that, I'm not just going to walk, into the house. Maybe I could press the bell, or, with all the modern houses now, you press the bell, somebody, if you use one of the Ringo, I don't know if you guys use, is it Ringo they call it? The one that you press and pop up, something will pop up on your phone, and you could literally click on the link and you see the person by the door. All right. These are all the controls that people put in place. Okay. But please follow me. So I got to the door and I can see that your door is left ajar. All right. So we can say that your house is vulnerable to physical theft. Okay. But you would also agree with me that here in the UK or in some part of the world, when you could close your door, you could lock up your door with a key, but inside the house, there could be like a knob that is connecting the door to the wall. All right. So those are extra controls, all right, that protect, okay, the door. So chances are from outside where I am, I can say that maybe the door is vulnerable. So your house is vulnerable because the door is left ajar. But if I'd apply a little force, all right, to the door, chances are the control that you are put in place, which is the knob that connects the door inside, which connect the door, all right, to your wall, would have stopped me. All right. If you're following me, just let me know. I just want to make sure that I'm communicating this to you. Are you following me, guys? I mean, I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. I just want confirmation. If you're following, because I'm trying to explain something. Because once you get this concept, it's easy, to be honest. Nobody will boo you if that they put it where we come from. Nobody would deceive you. You will just understand it. And some of you will not be a pen tester, but when you're engaging with pen testers, at least you understand what they're talking about. Okay. All right. So yes, so that knob can actually stop me from going inside. All right, or getting into the property, because it would protect so some extra layer of control. Okay, so what is vulnerability and where does penetration testing is? All right, so we have already established vulnerability. The fact that the door is left ajar, it is vulnerable. All right, but you see, until me that I was at the door, I was able to open the door, maybe by applying a little force, and get into the house successfully and make away with the goods of Tony Abolaji. All right. Then if I'm able to do that, then what I have done is I have exploited the vulnerability, which is the open door or the door that is left ajar. I've exploited that vulnerability. And when I exploit that vulnerability, what I am doing, in other words, is penetration testing. So scanning or vulnerability scanning, start and stop when you identify vulnerability. Penetration testing is what precedes it. And what does that mean? When you exploit that vulnerability, that's when penetration testing actually start from. Guys, is this making sense to you? So I'm going to read this slide now, but it would make a whole lot. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so it makes sense to you. All right. So vulnerability scanning is an automated process. We already talked about that identify weakness. So the weakness is in the door. All right. The weakness is in the website. Penetration testing goes one step further. It involves professional ethical hacker combining the result of the automated scan. So what is the result? The weakness that you have found in the vulnerability the vulnerability scan that you carry out. All right. So you must first understand that the door is open before you can penetrate it. But how do you know that the door is open? You carry out a vulnerability scan. All right. So with the expertise to review the vulnerability that may not be identified by scan alone. All right. So you see, you know that the door is open, but there might be just other things that is broken about that house that you're not aware of. Penetration testing would help you to do that. So vulnerabilities can only identify vulnerabilities, while penetration tests or tests that dig deeper, to identify the root cause of the vulnerability that allows access to secure system or store sensitive data. So the exploitation, all right, is what we mean by penetration tests that digging deep. All right, digging deep, to know. As a matter of fact, you cannot get into the house to now understand that, hang on a minute, I could even, there is even other door that I can use, to get out of the house. You can get into this and now find out that, hang on a minute, oh, there is a door, at the rear that leads to the garden. And from there, somebody can scale the fence and off they go. All right, so penetration testing will do that. It digs deeper, all right? But you must first start by understanding the weakness through vulnerability scan before you can exploit the weakness. So vulnerability scan and penetration test work together to improve network security. They can also identify false positive. I want you to know the word false positive. I'm going to be explaining it tomorrow. All right, it's very, very important. All right, these are interview questions. These are some of the things that you deal with on a daily basis. All right, when you go for, when you become a vulnerability analyst. All right, so to ensure they do not waste, so it helps to identify false positive. That's the penetration testing, where scan has identified weakness that do not exist to ensure you do not waste resource securing part of your infrastructure that are safe from the attack. All right, so penetration tests help you to further identify or prove whether the result of your scan, is false positive or false negative. All right, just hold that thought because I'm going to be talking to you more about that. Let me just show one more slide, then I will stop here. All right. So I'm not sure if this is visible enough, but if not, I'm going to put it together tomorrow properly. All right. Vulnerability scan and penetration testing. So this is like for like. All right. So the frequency, the report, the focus, the when they are performed, and also the value as well. All right, these are usually interview questions. All right, so the frequency at which you carry out vulnerability scan, so vulnerability scan, some say at least quarterly, especially after new equipment is loaded or the network undergoes significant change, and that is correct. All right, the frequency different from organization to organization. When we say frequency, how often do you carry out vulnerability scanning? How often? It's different. It depends on the risk appetite of that organization. So you would agree with me that, listen, if you work for Amazon, that they have a lot of valuable information, where their network is important to them, where the value of 1 second is, if they quantify seconds in terms of dollars, it would blow your mind that they cannot afford their network to be down in 1 second because the amount of money they will lose. Then to them, carrying out a regular vulnerability scan may not be like they won't be doing quarterly. The frequency at which they carry out the vulnerability scan will be much more higher compared to another organization that they barely update their website. Does that make sense? So it varies. It depends on what we call the risk appetite of that organization. All right, penetration testing. But one thing that it says here, that every time an organization made a major change, all right, to their network, the sensible thing for them to do is to carry out a vulnerability scan. When I say change, you upgrade your network, you make a changes, you change your code, you add new servers. The sensible things to do is to carry out a vulnerability scan. So you see, you can go to an interview and the question can come this way. So it could be a scenario question. What they're trying to test your knowledge on is the frequency. All right. Oh, they could just ask you, oh, so how often do you think we should be carrying out a vulnerability scan in our organization? Don't tell them that you should be doing it every week. No, you don't tell them. You say it depends on your risk appetite. However, if you make a major change to your network, then you should carry out vulnerability scan almost immediately. Penetration testing is different because penetration testing is quite intrusive. Vulnerability scan is not. All right, intrusive. I gave you an example earlier on that you exploit something. Do you know what it is to exploit something? It's like you're using a force. All right, imagine a thief now. When a thief comes to your house, what do? They have a gun in their hand. Or they're able to, they can harm anybody. All right, so it's penetration testing that you are trying to use a force, to break a control open. All right, so it is intrusive. And because it is intrusive, the frequency at which you will be carrying out penetration testing will be much more, it won't be high. You can't be, because if you try to carry out penetration testing all the time on your network, do you know the problem is you will break your network or you will break the control. And listen, you see, as long as penetration testing is good, it's all about the business benefits as well. If you're carrying out the penetration testing and your network is constantly down, then your stakeholders will frown at it, and also because they're losing money. So the frequency is low. A sensible organization, they will carry out once or twice in a year. All right, or if they suffer any major attack in that organization, usually the stakeholders or the business owner can say, all right, let's do a penetration test to ascertain what the problem is. Report, it provides a comprehensive vulnerability scan, provide a comprehensive baseline of what vulnerability exists and what changes since the last time. For penetration testing is usually, more coincide. It identify what data was compromised. All right. So penetration testing report is not elaborate. All right. I'm still going to talk to you about what we call gray tests, black box testing and also white box testing as well. So it's usually focused on the area of that you're testing, not too generic. Focus, all right, focus here, list known software vulnerabilities that could be exploited, all right? It will list everything. But here, for penetration testing, it would discover unknown and also exploitable weakness in a normal business procedure, all right? Performed by, all right, vulnerability scan will be performed by you. So if you're employed in an organization, to become a vulnerability management specialist, you will carry it out on a regular basis. It could either be credentialed or uncredentialed. All right, I'm going to talk to you about that later. But for penetration testing, they will use an independent outside service. All right, you see, you cannot be setting your own exam and you be the one that is marking it. It's wrong. All right, in an ideal situation, you will get a different company, an independent organization to come and carry out vulnerability scan, a penetration scan for your organization. The value, detect when equipment could be compromised, identify and reduce weaknesses as well. All right. So I think it only just makes sense for us to stop here today. I don't know your risk appetite, but if you're like me, I'm just going to go on. But let's stop here. I believe that we have built the foundation today. I believe that you have enjoyed what I've shown you so far. I'm really excited. As a matter of fact, what I have here, I'm supposed to show you, is vulnerability scan and penetration test related at all. I was supposed to show you the black box, the gray box, and also the white box testing as well. Compare vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, word for word. Then go on to talk about internal and external scan. Then talk about, internal scan. So these are all the good stuff I'm going to be showing you tomorrow. We're still building, laying the foundation, for the grand finale on Friday. So I want to say thank you for joining my, this section. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I've been able to help today to impact knowledge. I hope, this is what the wow for you. This is what we do in Smart Learning. We're just all out there to support and also to help as well for especially all of our friends from Africa and anywhere that you've come from. So that you can have a great and wonderful career here in the UK or anywhere that you have. So we're going to continue tomorrow by God's grace. It would even get much more better tomorrow. So all of those preambles that we had earlier on, we're not going to have it tomorrow. We're just going to hit the ground, running, and hopefully we'll be able to cover more slides. All right. So thank you. What I'll do now is I will stop recording. I would unmute everybody. All right. If anyone has got any question, more than happy to answer them now. All right. So stop recording.